Welcome to GRE. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. Do you want to retire? What is the definition of retirement today anyway? In fact, with just $2 or $3 million, would you be as happy as the world's richest man, Jeff Bezos? I'll break that down. Then I discuss key trends in the rental housing market today on Get Rich Education. When you want the best real estate and finance info, the modern internet experience limits your free articles access, and it's replete with paywalls, and you've got pop-ups and push notifications and cookies disclaimers. Ugh. At no other time in history has it been more vital to place nice, clean, free content into your hands that actually adds no hype value to your life. See, this is the golden age of quality newsletters, and I write every word of ours myself. It's got a dash of humor, and it's to the point. To get the letter, it couldn't be more simple. Text GRE to 66866, and when you start the free newsletter, you'll also get my 1-hour fast real estate course completely free. It's called the Don't Quit Your Daydream Letter, and it wires your mind for wealth. Make sure you read it. Text GRE to 66866. Text GRE to 66866.
You're listening to the show that has created more financial freedom than nearly any show in the world. This is Get Rich Education.
Welcome to GRE from Andover, England to Andover, Massachusetts, and across 188 nations worldwide. I'm Keith Weinhold, and you're listening to Get Rich Education. Around here, we say that financially free beats debt-free, and for many, financially free means retirement. Now, you might be far from retirement, but those with the most foresight are those that begin with the end in mind. And it can be rather dreamy for some to think about retirement, and then others don't want to retire. I'm asking you, do you want to retire? Do you ever want to retire? In fact, we posed that very question to our Get Rich Education audience. I've got those results that I'll share with you here later, and it is really interesting. But let me give you some perspective first. I think that some young people fall into the trap of daydreaming about retirement. Oh, you might want to retire someday. But look, you can't dream about it too much. You've got to live in the moment, because if you retire at traditional retirement age, those people tend to look back on their younger years and regret the things that they didn't try when they were younger. Don't quit your daydream, but don't dream about older age too much when you're younger. With the wealth-building concepts that we discuss here on the show every week, you don't have to be that old when you retire. To me, what sets the stage for you being able to retire is when you reach the point of being job optional. At what point are you job optional? That is a key turning point. And for you, as soon as you're job optional, you might want to retire at that point, but you don't want to retire so soon that things will be iffy on whether or not you run out of money before you run out of life. The best way to avoid that situation is to build your residual outside of work income alongside you during your working years, and then you won't have to merely guess on if a certain lump sum amount is going to be accumulated and sufficient. Now, one definition that I like for retirement is that you stop doing income-producing activities that you don't want to do. All right, that's one definition. What you've done there is that you've stopped sacrificing today for some imaginary tomorrow if you stop doing those mandatory income-producing activities. Look, you've got 3 key resources in your life: time, health, and money. When you're younger, you'll trade away your time and even your health for money. That's because you feel like you have an abundance of time and health and not much money yet. But as you progress through life, continuing to make this trade, your time and your health become more scarce resources, no longer abundant ones. There will come a point in your life where working will cost you more than retiring. You don't want to get to that point. Now, you've probably seen those sheets of paper with the squares that you can hang up. There's 52 boxes in a year, and it's divided into 90 sections, one for each year of your life, and it shows you graphically in your face how many weeks and years you really have left. And by the way, I cannot get myself to hang up one of those sheets. That is just too much of an in-my-face reminder of my own mortality, okay? I'm not doing that. But what do you like to do? Do you like canoeing or reading books or running in 5K races? Well, if you read 5 books a year and you're going to live 50 more years, well, that's just 250 books for the rest of your life. Now, that sounds like quite a few, but when you're done, you're done. Do you have some best friends that you see, say, once a year? Do you live a long ways from your parents and you only see them once or twice annually? Well, at this rate, then, you might only see your friends, say, 31 more times. And if your parents are older, what if you only see them 18 more times? That might sound like quite a few, but when that's done, that is done. Now, this can get a little depressing, but what I'm helping you do here is identify what's important to you in your life. A lot of people don't have any real hobbies outside of their jobs. People feel sad and unfulfilled and can never see themselves retiring when this is the case. Now, you might enjoy drinking with your friends. All right, sure, but that's not a real hobby. Hopefully, you have the ambition to know that there are a lot of things that you really want to do, and you need to find the time in order to do those things. Well, here's the good news. You are the one that's in control of how much of your time on Earth you spend doing those activities or spending time with those people. Now, I was chatting with one woman about retirement. Gosh, this was interesting. And she told me that she doesn't want to retire. Okay, well, she justified her stance by saying, who wants to stay at home? And I'm thinking, who wants to stay at home? I found that a really curious answer. Why does retirement mean staying at home? Like if you don't go to work, you'd stay at home? So maybe this person didn't have any hobbies. I mean, I would think that retirement would include the time and ability to travel well. So retiring and staying at home are not at all identical to me. A few years ago, we had financial expert Kim Butler here on the show. You might remember that really intelligent woman. She was a retirement detractor, not a fan of retirement. The definition of retirement to Kim, if you remember, is to remove from service. That was her definition, meaning that you'll no longer serve others. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. That's her perspective. Well, I think that you can still serve others in retirement. Take a leadership position at your church, coach kids baseball, volunteer at a homeless shelter. And even if retirement does mean to remove from service, well, you probably served others at a full-time job for decades, probably even for most of your life. So it's okay to have others in turn serve you in retirement. Well, today I'm here asking you, do you want to retire, and what is retirement? Now that I've given you some food for thought, let me discuss some more formal definitions of retirement first before I continue here. Now, if you go and Google what is retirement, the word age appears after that as a fourth word, suggesting that you might select what is retirement age. Well, the former boxer George Foreman, he said it well. He said, it's not at what age I want to retire, it's at what income. Yeah. The first retirement definition that you find, though, is the time of life when one permanently chooses to leave the workforce. All right, well, that's actually a good short definition, and it'll show you that the traditional retirement age is 65 in the U.S. and a lot of other developed countries too. But in the U.S. today, full retirement age, when you can collect full Social Security benefits, is age 67 if you were born in 1960 or later, and the earliest that you can collect benefits is 62. But do you know what the average monthly Social Security check amount is today? It is $1,767. Now, that amount can vary a lot depending on the recipient type, but it gives you some idea that that is only a supplement to your other income that you've got to figure out. And a sad and paltry $1,767, I mean, that right there, that may very well be a motivator to make you want to invest well elsewhere. The old standard is that retirees need 80% of the income that they had when they were working. Well, we're more abundantly minded here at GRE. I'd like to think that your income could go up in retirement as you keep adding cash flowing assets. But in a recent survey of consumer finance, the mean retirement amount saved of all working age families, the complete family here, not just the individual, is just $269K. That's not per year as retirement income. That's just the lump sum to live off of. Now, some workers, especially government employees, they have a pension. That's where you don't have to just draw from a lump sum at the end of your life like you would with a 401k. So a pension, that's a predetermined livable amount that you're paid each year in retirement. It's often based on the percent that you earn during your working years, say 75%. That's why most people like a pension more than a 401k, because pensions are about the perpetual income, not the lump sum where you just hope that it lasts. But pensions are expensive, so the private sector really started phasing them out beginning in the 1980s. Really, in the U.S., retirement, what that used to mean is turning 65 and drawing a pension and Social Security. I mean, that's what you'll hear your grandparents talk about. Now, for us in younger generations, remember, your 401k withdrawals must begin between age 59 and a half and 70, and you must begin paying tax on it at that time. Now, there's been a flurry of research about advances in longevity. Some of the more optimistic ones even say that if you're currently under age 55 and you get to the age of 65 in good health, you're likely to live to be 125 plus. If that comes true, or even partially true, that tilts toward not accumulating a lump sum in retirement, but having an income stream from something like income-producing real estate or stock dividends. You really need to focus on that income stream if you're going to live a few decades longer than the current life expectancy. Look, when you make the production of ongoing income part of your ongoing investment strategy, you don't need what many retirees think of as the 4% rule. You probably heard of it. What the 4% rule is, that's a popular retirement withdrawal strategy. And it says that you can safely withdraw the amount equal to 4% of your savings during the year that you retire, and then that you're supposed to adjust for inflation each subsequent year for, say, 20 or 30 years. Well, that imposes serious limits. I mean, that is synonymous with the life deferral plan, like a 401k, where you voluntarily reduce your income in your working years to participate in an employee-sponsored plan that isn't even designed to produce income until you're older, trading away pieces of your 30-year-old self to get pieces of your 80-year-old self back. You're drawing down on your big pot that you have saved for retirement, and instead, if you've been adding income-producing investments for a decade or more, well, you won't have to draw it down at the limiting 4%. You've got to, of course, figure out inflation. Those retirees that are tapping into one lump sum amount, like from an employer-sponsored plan, a 401k, or a 403b, they just try to guess at the future inflation rate. That's all any of us can do. And a lot of times they safely assume 4%. Around here, we talk about how the real rate of inflation long-term is almost certainly higher than that. So if you've got income from real estate, and say you even do want to have your real estate paid off in retirement, you may or may not want to pay it off since your tenant services your debt. Well, when it comes to inflation, rents tend to stay indexed to inflation. So your residual cash flow is pretty well protected from erosion to inflation. I've got some good news. You might be able to retire substantially sooner than you think. That's because if you're age 20 or 30 or 40 or 50, whatever, most planners, they project your wealth from a lump sum that grows with compound interest. Well, compound interest is faulty, as we know. It's degraded down after you account for inflation, emotion, taxes, fees, and volatility. Luckily for you, you have more than weak, impotent, and diluted compound interest because in addition to your residual income, you're going to have bigger lump sums than others because you had compounding leverage, not compounding interest. Even if you had zero real estate cash flow at retirement, you've got leverage. You made lots of 20% down payments on properties that appreciated, say, 5% a year. That means you were leveraged 5-to-1, and you got a 25% return in that first year of each rental property that you owned. And as any GRE devotee knows, that 25% is one of just 5 ways you're paid. This is why you can actually retire sooner than you're thinking. With help from leverage, what you've done is collapse time frames. Understand that when you're in your retirement years, most people, they have a U-shaped spending pattern. Yes, U-shaped spending in retirement because you tend to spend a lot of money in your early retirement years. You're traveling, you're living it up, and then you get a decade or two older, you slow down, you stay at home and spend less, the trough of the U, and then your expenses go up for end-of-life care. Yes, U-shaped spending patterns in retirement are common. And I know I talked about slowing down there at the trough of the U, but of course you won't be slowing down. It's just that others have tended to. Now, a really interesting topic that has circulated among many lately, and I believe that this was first proposed and debated on Reddit or X, and that is this. After the first $2 million or $3 million, a paid-off home, and a good car, there is no difference in the quality of life between you and Jeff Bezos, the richest man in the world. That's the topic. What do you think about that? $2 or $3 million is attainable. You might already be there or beyond it. And of course, this says nothing about an income stream, so let's presume that there isn't one. All right, well, in response to this topic, Spencer here from Orlando says, I strongly disagree. Private jets, complete immunity to healthcare costs, and the ability to donate sums that change lives are all heavy-hitting things that you can't do with $3 million. Tugba from New York says, I agree 100%. Things like vacationing on a private island or a super yacht, they may be cool to experience, but these are not necessarily things I'm thinking of when I think of happiness. An anonymous respondent says, Bezos's 420,000 acres probably have several views that would beat my view. Glenn from Florida says, I have a paid-off 975 square foot home, a 2018 Honda CR-V, and not much spare cash, but I do have a wife going on 49 years who loves me, so I am richer than most millionaires. Mike Key, I don't know where he's from, Mike says, I disagree with the $2 million to $3 million thing. I have some wealthy friends, and they say that the sweet spot is $10 million to $100 million. In this zone, you can live very comfortably, but you're also able to blend in easily enough with most of the middle class. When you eclipse $100 million, typically you're involved with something public and visible, and then security and other considerations become much more of a problem. All right, that was his take, Mike Keys. And then we had a number of others point out that $2 million is not enough to fly private, which makes a big difference to your quality of life. And yes, they do have a point there. I have flown private once, and there is a substantial difference. Finally, Tanner's got a good point here. He says, I agree. There is no significant difference in quality of life. Having safety, security, education, some autonomy, and growth potential is key. The difference between a regular vacation and a $50,000 vacation is negligible, and it is the same with cars, food, watches, and anything materialistic. That's what Tanner says. All All right, well, to summarize that for you here, and this is also parallel with my belief, is that I disagree with this Bezos thing. With the $2 to $3 million net worth and your necessities taken care of, there is a difference between that life and Jeff Bezos' life. But remember, the claim is that there was no difference. However, that difference is not that vast. That's my opinion. And yes, one can say that no amount of money can bring you happiness, but with money, you can buy time that you can fill with happiness and those that you love. Now that you have some perspective in different viewpoints, maybe you're better able to answer that question that I asked you at the beginning. Do you want to retire? And here it is, our poll that was run on our Instagram stories. It asked, do you want to retire? And below those words, it showed a happy couple on vacation holding hands. And the result was, yes, 58% of you want to retire, and the no's were 42%. If you've given extraordinary service to humanity, I say, sure, thank you for your great service to humanity. Congratulations. Go ahead and retire. More straight ahead as I discuss the most proven retire early vehicle of all time and key shifts in the real estate market and how you can actionably build wealth with it, positive leverage. This is episode 494. You're just 6 weeks away from an unforgettable episode 500. I'm Keith Weinhold. You're listening to Get Rich Education. You know, I'll just tell you, for the most passive part of my real estate investing, personally, I put my own dollars with Freedom Family Investments because their funds pay me a stream of regular cash flow and returns are better than a bank savings account, up to 12%. Their minimums are as low as $25K. You don't even need to be accredited for some of them. It's all backed by real estate, and I kind of love how the tax benefit of doing this can offset capital gains and your W-2 job's income. And they've always given me exactly their stated return, paid on time. So it's steady income, no surprises while I'm sleeping or just doing the things I love. For a little insider tip, I've invested in their Power Fund. To get going on that, text family to 66866. Oh, and this isn't a solicitation. If you want to invest where I do, just go ahead and text family to 66866. For a lender that's a specific expert with income property, you need Ridge Lending Group, NMLS 42056. In GRE history, from beginners to veterans, they provided our listeners with more mortgages than anyone. It's where I get my own loans for single-family rentals up to fourplexes. Start your pre-qualification and chat with President Chaley Ridge personally. They'll even customize a plan tailored to you for growing your portfolio. Start at ridgelendinggroup.com, ridgelendinggroup.com.
What's up, everyone? This is HGTV's Tariq El Musa. Listen to Get Rich Education with Keith Weinhold and Don't Quit Your Daydream.
Welcome back to Get Rich Education. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. You might want to know what I think about the ruling that was made 10 days ago with respect to the antitrust case against the NAR. I was asked to speak on television about it. I put more about that in last week's newsletter, so I don't have too much more to tell you here. The high point is that the standard 5 to 6% commissions are gone. Sellers used to pay that completely. That commission amount was split between their seller agent and the buyer's agent. What really happened here is that the lawsuits argue that the NAR and brokerages kept buyers and sellers out of the commission negotiation process, and that led to higher overall costs. And really, the result of this is that it should make some agents lower their fees in order to stay competitive. We should end up seeing lower sale costs when one sells a property. Some estimates are that agent commissions will be down about 30%. Perhaps half of America's 2 million agents will leave the industry. We'll see about that. But see, sellers are still going to want to get the most money for their property that they can, and and they're still going to be using comparable sales. So that's why it remains to be seen if it really affects listing prices at all. Overall, the NAR continues its waning influence in the real estate industry. Before we discuss the rental property market, I find this kind of upsetting. I mean, do we need to politicize everything? Redfin recently reported that the majority of U.S. homeowners and renters say that housing affordability affects their pick for president. I mean, this is getting ridiculous. That's according to a Redfin Commission survey conducted by Qualtrics. 3,000 U.S. homeowners and renters were surveyed. Those surveyed were worried about the lack of housing inventory and affordability. But I mean, how do you really know which presidential administration to blame that on or who to give credit to? I mean, Biden did recently roll out a plan to help with housing affordability. And then on the other hand, Trump is famously known as a real estate investor after all. Let's talk about the single-family rental market. Do you know what the typical rent range is for a single-family rental in America today? Well, the John Burns Single-Family Rental Survey shows us that most respondents report monthly rents in the $1,750 to $2,250 range. There are about 8 ranges here, and 54% of single-family rents are in that range, so really close to $2,000. And yeah, I myself have many or even most of my single-family rentals in that same range, near $2,000. Rents are lowest in the Midwest and Southeast, where a lot of operators report average rents $1,700 to $1,800. And then at almost $2,700, California rent outpaces much of the nation. And you know what? If you just heard that right there, you'd actually think that California is the place to invest and that the Midwest and Southeast are not. But it's just the opposite of that, because it's not about the absolute rent amount. It's about that ratio of rent to purchase price. And that's what makes the Midwest and Southeast the best places. And a third region that's an investment sweet spot is what I like to call the inland Northeast. Pittsburgh, Harrisburg, Philadelphia, even Baltimore. Although Baltimore is getting a little coastal, it's the inland Northeast that has the numbers that work, not the coastal Northeast like New York City and Boston and those really high-priced markets where rents don't keep up proportionally. And of course, there are pockets of opportunity elsewhere like Texas and some other markets. And note that no part of Pennsylvania is on the East Coast at all, not even Philadelphia. None of it touches the coast. I am indeed a native Pennsylvanian. You get these little geography lessons from me interspersed here at GRE. Redfin tells us that rents in the U.S., now this is both apartments and single family now. We were just talking about single family earlier. Rents are up 2% annually. That's actually the biggest gain in 13 months. Yes, a pretty modest increase there as rent amounts have just been really pretty steady for the last year. And so much new apartment construction took place last year that there is quite a bit of apartment supply to soak up in certain metros. And you might even see concessions on some of these. I mean, if a new apartment complex is just finished, you know what's sitting there? 250 vacant units all at once. So you're seeing some apartment owners try to entice renters with 1 month's free rent for a 12-month lease, for example. The single-family rental market is in better shape from a demand-supply perspective than apartments are. See, what's happened, though, is that with the Airbnb market becoming both oversaturated in some markets and then cities cracking down on short-term rentals in other markets, it's that some STR owners have turned their single-family homes from Airbnbs over to long-term rentals. And that brought a little more supply out of the long-term rental market. More places have bans on short-term rentals. And gosh, I just had an awful short-term rental experience last month when I stayed at one. I usually go for hotels, and that's what I'll be doing for a while again. Now, Adam Data, they have some great stats for us here. They reported that rental margins are increasing in about 2/3 of the nation. That's some good news, but the increase is still pretty small. And they show us the top 5 counties for single-family rental yield, and they used 3 bedrooms in their single-family rental yield comps, and they did it in larger markets of 1 million plus. All right, so these are counties of a large population where you're getting the best cash flow today, basically, on single families. 5th, and I'm surprised at this, it is Riverside County, California. That's the Inland Empire. You sure want to check landlord-tenant law in a highly regulated place like California. 4th is Cook County, Illinois. That's Chicago. 3rd is Cuyahoga County, Ohio. That's Cleveland. The 2nd best single-family rental yield is Allegheny County, Pennsylvania. That's Pittsburgh. And 1st, number 1 for rent yield on single families is Wayne County, Michigan. That's Detroit. We've discussed Detroit on the show before. It has a stigma. It seems like the only way to make the stigma disappear is to visit. And you're going to find investor advantage properties in a lot of those counties through our GRE investment coaches here at GREmarketplace.com about single-family rental homes. Now, some asset types like apartment buildings or perhaps self-storage units, they have economies of scale and some other advantages over single-family rentals, but single families are a favorite. They might have the best risk-adjusted return anywhere today. Even after 2008's Great Recession, those that had bought for cash flow persevered and even thrived. In fact, single-family rentals have at least 15 distinct advantages over larger apartment buildings, some that you probably never thought about before. And as I discuss this, don't think that I dislike apartment buildings, okay? It's likely not the most advantageous time in the market cycle for apartments. It's tenant quality. Single-family rentals attract a better quality of tenant. They take better care of the premises. Then there's the neighborhood. Single families tend to be in a better neighborhood. Then there's appreciation. Properties tend to appreciate better over time. Fourthly, there's the school district. They're more likely to be in a better school district. Then there's the retention. Tenants stay longer, creating less vacancy expense. And the aforementioned neighborhood and school districts are why they stay. Then you've got common areas. A lot of people don't think about this. Single families, they don't have these common areas to clean and maintain. Apartments have hallways, stairs, laundry rooms, and common outdoor grounds that a custodian needs to service. And this is another overlooked profit drag that apartment investors miss in their P&L, in their profit and loss projections. And I missed this expense on my first ever apartment buy. Then there's utilities. In single-family rentals, tenants often pay all the utilities. They even care for the lawn. The larger the apartment building is, the more likely you'll, as the owner, be the one paying utility costs like heat, electricity, water, wastewater, and landscaping. Then there's divisibility. What if you've got property that's not performing the way you hoped it would? Well, if you had 10 single-family rentals, you can sell the 1 or 2 that are not performing. And with a 10-unit apartment building, you must either keep or sell all of the units. It's not divisible. Fire and pestilence. Fire and pests, they are more easily controlled in single-family rentals where there aren't common walls. Even if you're adequately insured, these diffuse conditions, they often affect multiple units and families in larger complexes. Financing is a big deal. Income single-family rentals, they have both lower mortgage interest rates and lower down payment requirements than apartments. You can secure 10 single-family rental loans if you're single, 20 if you're married, at the best rates and terms through the GSEs, the government-sponsored enterprises, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, with 20% down payments. And apartments rarely, if ever, have 30-year fixed-rate terms like 1 to 4 unit properties do. And you can get more than 10 or 20 of them, but the financing terms are not going to be as good. And what about vacancy rate? It's true that if your single family is vacant, your vacancy rate is 100%. If your fourplex has 1 vacancy, then your vacancy rate is only 25%. But the same is true if you own 4 single-family rentals and 1 is vacant. Then there's management. If you hire professional management, your manager would likely rather deal with higher quality single-family residents. If you're self-managing, this is a demographic that you would probably rather handle yourself too. supply and demand. There aren't enough low-cost single-family rentals that make the best income-producing properties. Demand exceeds supply, and this is going to continue in both the short and the medium term. Then there's market risk. This is another overlooked criterion. Yes, criterion. Does anyone even know that the singular of criteria is criterion? You've got to keep your properties filled with rent-paying tenants that have jobs. So if you think you're going to be able to buy 10 rental units in the near future, well, your 10-unit apartment building, that's only going to be in one location, leaving you exposed to just one geography's economic fortunes. Instead, with, say, 10 single-family rentals, you could have 4 in Little Rock, 3 in Dallas, and 3 in Birmingham. And then your exit strategy, that's an important consideration, especially for newer investors. Years down the road, when it's time for you to sell your income property, hopefully after years of handsome profits, there's a greater buyer pool for your single family than there's going to be for your apartment building. More buyers can afford the lower price. And then unlike apartments, you even have access to a pool of buyers that might want to occupy your property themselves, to live there as an owner-occupant. And it might even be your current tenant that buys it from you. So those are some of the attributes of single-family rental homes. Again, I really like apartment buildings too. I could go on with more advantages for apartment buildings. If you've been meaning to grow your portfolio, when you have this information, don't let it be like two well-meaning friends that meet at the gym and then they say, hey, we should grab lunch sometime. You know what? That is a non-starter. You got to put something on the calendar to make something happen. You can't make any money from the property that you don't own. You can just copy me and buy the same types of properties in the same places where I buy, get pre-qualified for a mortgage loan, and we'll help you find property. We talked about retirement earlier. I mean, the earlier you get into real estate, the better off you're going to be. From that perspective, the best time is today as you get leverage working for you and inflation profiting working for you. What's going on today is with this lower affordability, first-time home buyers, they have often now got to spend years saving for a down payment while they rent. And in the meantime, you can solve their housing problem. They become your renter in these freshly renovated homes or new build homes. And I'll even give you 2 addresses before we leave today. Though in today's tightly supplied market, sound income properties can seem more rare than a pop-up ad that's actually useful. Supply is short overall, but because of our long-standing relationships, we have a good selection right now. This first of 2 properties is on Crane Road in Memphis, Tennessee. It's a single-family rental. The purchase price is $169,500. The rent's $1,250. 3-bed, 2-bath, 1,265 square feet. The year built is 1964. Ask your investment coach about the fresh renovations there. And the other one is in Little Rock, Arkansas. And I think I told you that when I made my Little Rock real estate visit, I had some extra time and I visited the Bill Clinton Presidential Library, which although it's called a library, presidential libraries, they're really like museums, a tribute to the past president. What I don't think that I did share is that in the entire Bill Clinton Presidential Library, I could not find one mention of Monica Lewinsky. Not one shred of evidence that ever took place. Nothing.
Let me tell you something. There's going to be a whole bunch of things we don't tell Mrs. Clinton.
Nothing. Whitewashed all the evidence at all. Nothing there. This property is on Duncan Drive in Little Rock, Arkansas. The single-family rental has a purchase price of $117,900. Rent is $975. 3-bed, 2-bath, 888 square feet. And the year it was built was 1967. So these are some of the lower-cost properties that you find at GRE Marketplace. If you prefer brand new builds, brand new construction, we can help you with those too. You typically can't find these deals on public-facing platforms that are broad like the MLS or Zillow, and it's completely free. Contact your GRE investment coach and learn about these properties' rehab details and others like them, learn about their occupancy status and more. And if you don't have a coach, pick one. They'll help you out at GREmarketplace.com. Until next week, I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. Don't quit your daydream.
Nothing on this show should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for individualized advice. Opinions of guests are their own. Information is not guaranteed. All investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss. The host is operating on behalf of Get Rich Education, LLC exclusively.
The preceding program was brought to you by your home for wealth building, GetRichEducation.com.